Join us as we take you to Kotor in Montenegro, just over the border from Croatia. We spent 3 days exploring and we share all the info you need for a visit to this small medieval city. Learn about the old town, the fortress walk, the best speedboat tour, where to stay, and of course the best places to eat and drink. And we cover some history and also some things to consider when travelling to Montenegro, including tips on crossing the border. Listen as we share the stories of how people kept buying us drinks, the music and dance festival we stumbled across, and what to do if, like us, you're in the middle of a complete electricity blackout in 40-degree heat for over 8 hours. Please enjoy episode 118, all about Kotor. And if you would like to see the pictures that we took while we were there, and they are stunning, it's a gorgeous city, then click on the link to episode 118 in the podcast description on the player you are listening on now. Good morning, Lyle.
Good morning, Leonita.
And good morning to everyone listening, or good afternoon, or wherever you are, to the Beach Travel Wine podcast. Today we are in Montenegro, specifically in Kotor, or Kotor, however you want to pronounce it, which is not the capital, but it's probably the most visited place in Montenegro. But just to give you a little bit of lay of the land of where it is, I think a lot of people have heard of it, but might not quite know where it is. Give us some information on Montenegro and the location and stuff, Dom, please.
Okay, so the location of Montenegro, it's a small mountainous country in southeast Europe. It borders Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia, Kosovo, Albania, and the Adriatic Sea. So we've
got a lot of borders.
So we're talking small. So basically the population is 617,000. That's Montenegro, and Kotor's population is 13,300. We are talking small. The area of Montenegro is 13,812 square kilometres.
So that do it like, because my maths is, I'm just thinking off the top of my head. So 13,000. That would make it fit into Tasmania like 5 times. Would it?
Yeah, and you're not going to believe this. It will fit into Australia 560 times.
Yeah,
I
couldn't quite do the maths on that.
We're talking, tiny.
All right, so it is a tiny little country, and I think most people probably get there by going over the border from Croatia. So it's just south of borders, that main southern border near Dubrovnik in Croatia.
Now, Kotor's location is a town in coastal region of Montenegro, located in a secluded part of the Bay of Kotor. The old Mediterranean port of Kotor is surrounded by fortifications built during the Venetian times. Some have called it the southern fjord in Europe, but it is a ria, a submerged river canyon, together with nearly overhanging limestone cliffs of Orhen and Lovchen. Kotor and its surrounding area form an impressive landscape.
Now, I can see why they would think it was a fjord, because the couple of the fjords we've been to, like in New Zealand, it sort of has the water with the mountains sort of coming straight out of it, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, I think with the fjords, what it is, the actual ocean comes in between the islands, but the difference is this is the Adriatic Sea, so it's the whole lot.
So when we drove in, we came across the border from Croatia, driving in. I don't know that we could lift our jaws up off of our laps, because the views driving around the Bay of Kotor, it's called. It is the Adriatic Sea, but it's the Bay of Kotor. There's basically this one road to like a dual carriageway from the border all the way around to Kotor, and the whole way you are on the water, and I've never seen views like it. Have you?
No, look, the mountains are the limestone, so there's really no vegetation on them. So.
Well, and any vegetation is like that dark, deep forest green, which is contrasting with the white of the limestone. But it almost looks like there's no room between the mountains and the bay. But I mean, obviously there's the villages, because they just jut straight up.
Yeah. It's as you said, jaw dropping. I would have probably gone eye popping. It is like the dramatic landscape. That to me was the most unique thing I've ever seen.
The water in the bay was still and clear and a deep green colour. It was just beautiful. And we drove along there, and you could see where Kotor was, and it was quite a slow moving trip, because, as I said, like, it's one road.
One road. So, I mean, the trade-off to have those beautiful views and to be able to be that close to the water is that it's a double carriage road. And so you've got to be very, very careful with your timing as far as
getting in and out and cross the border. Well, let's talk about crossing the border, because you can fly into an airport, can't you, and get a car.
To get into Kotor, you can fly into Tavit Airport, is located 4.9 miles outside of the city centre and services mainly regional airlines.
Sure.
Most travellers fly into the capital at Podgorica Airport and then connect by bus or private car to Kotor.
Most people I speak to have come in from Croatia, though. And as I said, a lot of people do a day trip. So there's a couple of things to remember when you're crossing the border. You've got to go out of Croatia if you're crossing that way, and then come into Montenegro. So there's 2 border checkpoints.
Yeah.
And once you cross from Croatia, you will lose data on your phone. Like, there's no internet, only Wi-Fi that you can get at accommodation places and that sort of stuff. So if you need to access any documents or anything like that you've got on email, that sort of stuff, download it first and have it on your phone. And if you are on a bus trip, which a lot of people do a day trip, and I'm going to put a link to the day trip that I would recommend in the show notes. But if you do a day trip, everyone on the bus has to get off and on, don't they?
Yeah, at the border. Yeah,
at the border, and show your passport. And if there's someone on the bus that shouldn't be there, that holds up the whole bus. And that did happen to some people we know, and they were stuck there at the border for about 3 hours. So, and they do check cars that aren't from Croatia or Montenegro. We were following some people from a car from Albania, and our driver overtook them quickly so we wouldn't get stuck behind them, because they'd be very thorough checking their car. I would recommend trying to stay in Kotor or somewhere in Montenegro for a night or 2, because if you do have any troubles at the border, you're not going to have much time,
Yeah, we were flying when we were going home. We were flying
when we were leaving Kotor, going back to Dubrovnik Airport.
Yeah. We probably gave ourselves a good 2 hours grace, just in case there was a traffic problem.
Yeah,
because
if there's an accident, there's no alternate route.
No, that's it. That's the problem you've got.
And if there is a hold up at the border, once again, you just got to sit there.
You've just got to sit there.
In fact, the drivers,
we always give ourselves a long time, but we probably added an extra couple of hours.
But the drivers also always check. They've got live cams now at the border crossings.
That's true.
And they were checking that the whole time. There's one main and one small one that we went across the smaller one. The buses have to go across the bigger one, though. So I
would, for me personally, if I was going to do a day trip, I would get a private tour, as in a private car, like a private transport. Without question, I wouldn't take the risk. The guy we had, Rocco, he was a young guy. He picked us up on the island of Kachula, and he took us on the ferry, and then he drove and he pointed out all the fabulous tourist spots. He was a great guy, and they just know what they're doing. So my personal view is, if you can, get a private transport.
Okay. Now, have you got anything else to add about location before we probably need to get into some history?
Did we talk about the accommodation? We didn't.
No.
Okay, so the accommodation, we stayed at the Hotel Monte Cristo. It was about $250 per night, centrally located in the old town. That included a buffet breakfast in the restaurant next door. Look, it was old for sure, because it's in the old town. But I thought it was clean. It was comfortable. The reception staff were amazing.
I liked it because it was like tile, so it was cool. It was a big, high ceiling room. We never felt hot in there at all. Even though it was 30-something degrees one day. So
I can't remember how it happened, but I remember it was our first day there, and you were looking for somewhere to watch the Euro Cup, and there was a game on. And I came out to reception, and I must have put the bags in it. And here you are upstairs, and you're having a beer with one of the staff.
They've got a little bar there, and there was a guy sitting there watching the football. And I said, "Oh, can I sit here and watch football?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Oh, can I grab 2 beers?" Because I knew you wouldn't be far away. And next thing, he's got on the phone and he's rung someone to get. He wasn't working there.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he might be part of the staff, but he wasn't the bar staff. That bar wasn't open. So he rang someone in another bar who arrived with 2 beers for us.
Well, you imagine it'd be the restaurant where we had.
Yeah, but I didn't pay for them. Like he said, here you go. And then he left at half time and sent 2 more beers up.
That's right, he did too. Yeah, it was so friendly. And really, to be honest, that was a really good kickstart to the trip in Montenegro. In Kotor. So
I'll put a link to the accommodation. I mean, there's so many different places around the Old Town that I'd recommend staying, definitely in that Old Town area. But I'll put a link to the Monte Cristo because it was in a great spot. It was pleasant. It was reasonably priced. That's where I'd stay back there again.
Let's get into the history.
Let's do that.
Okay. Montenegro's independence was recognized by the great powers at the Congress of Berlin in 1878. Now, the great powers were Russia, Great Britain, France, Austria-Hungary, Italy, and Germany. In 1910, the country became a kingdom. After World War I, the kingdom became part of Yugoslavia. Following the dissolution of the Federation of Yugoslavia in 1989, Montenegro had been part of the Yugoslavia's successor state, named the State Union of Serbia and Montenegro in 2003, until declaring independence on the 3rd of June 2006. Now, here's a bit of history regarding Kotor. Kotor was founded by the ancient Romans in the 10th century. It was an autonomous city ruled from the Byzantine, and from 1186 to 1371, it was a free city of medieval Serbia. It was Venetian and Hungary for brief periods, an independent republic from 1395 to 1420, and Venetian again until 1797. From 1797 to 1805, Kotor is part of the Austrian Empire. In 1806, Russian came to Kotor, only governed for 1 year. French soon menaced Kotor as the Russian army was defeated by the French. Russian, with a secret contract, give Kotor to France, which ruled over Kotor from 1807 to 1813. In 1814, the Paris Peace Conference, Kotor was given to Austria. Kotor was exhausted by numerous occupations, awaited the biggest war ever fought, World War II. In the year 1941, Kotor was liberated from the Nazi control in November 1944. So
yeah, it's had a lot. It's been around the mulberry bush.
Yeah. And as we said earlier, it was really only gained its real sovereignty in 2006. Yeah. So it hasn't even really been
an independent country
for 20 years yet.
Yeah. So I think one of the main draw cards to Kotor is the Old Town, isn't it? So and it's only a little old town, but it's really beautiful. It's fortified, so it's got the city walls. And it's got 3 gates into it, hasn't it?
Yep.
And on the outside of town, it's got the big round sort of, are they bastions?
Yes, yep.
So it's got those as well. And then there's a lovely river that sort of runs down the outside of the Northern Gate area. So
and that's the Skuda River, Skuda.
And then out the front, the sea gate is obviously the Bay of Kotor. I mean, what do you say, about 250 metres from the
about 250 metres from the old port. So it's a deep depth port. And, it's amazing. It's beautiful.
There's like little cobblestone streets winding around. There's little staircases that go up. They're obviously, like in a lot of these places, they've got the gardens and the little hanging pots and plants everywhere and really funky little shops. Like, it's well known for the cats around the place, and there's shops just dedicated to cat stuff now, and little bars with music, and then big restaurants, outdoor seating areas. We went somewhere where the fans were on and they were spraying the water because it was so hot. And I don't know, there's churches and all sorts of stuff, isn't there, in the old town?
All that's true. And obviously, when you go out towards the port area, all you see is cruise ships.
Yeah. Before we talk about that, I have some really nice photos of the old town. So this is episode 118, and if you go to the podcast player you're listening on now, in the podcast description, I will have a link to the website that has all the pictures, maps, and the tour information and the links to accommodation and that sort of thing. So just, go and click on that that now. A little bit more about the old town before we go to the port?
Yeah, basically the main features of the old town. The Square of Arms is a large longitude square entered through the sea gate and features some of Kotor's most important landmarks, such as the Rector's Palace, Napoleon's Theatre, and the Clock Tower, which was built in 1602.
Yeah, I've got a lovely photo of that.
One of the largest and most beautiful buildings is the Triumphant Cathedral, which was built in 1166 and contains many frescoes and a treasury of jewels. The cathedral's gently hued interior is a masterpiece of Romanesque architecture, slender Corinthian columns, alternate with pillars of pink stone, thrusting upwards to support a series of vaulted roofs.
It's got some funky stuff upstairs, hasn't it?
Upstairs is a sacral art museum filled with paintings, vestments, and a spooky wooden crucifix dates from 1288. Behind the grille in the chapel are assorted body parts of saints, including St. Typhon himself. Now, there's a mixture of Catholic and Orthodox churches and the remains of Franciscan and Dominican monasteries. Now, there's 9 of those. So you've got to remember, this is only a really small area. So those churches and then the monasteries dominate the landscape a little bit there.
And then you've got the different squares around the place too, and there were some pretty blossom trees, and there's a well at the northern gate as you come in. There's like a big fountain area there. I think there's a nightclub, isn't there? You can go up the stairs, and they've got a restaurant nightclub up on top of the city walls as well, which has just stunning views back down over the bay and the port area. So you really need to explore the old town. You need to have a good wander around, don't you?
Yeah, well,
and we did every day.
Yeah, well, as Leanne said, there's plenty of bars, and one of my favourites, and we visited it a couple of times. It was called the Old Town Pub. And we stopped there for a beer and a wine a couple of afternoons because it was so hot. And like the staff there, the guy behind the bar was fabulous. We sat outside like al fresco, and there was that little shop there with the cats opposite. And the music was just thumping in the outside speakers, and it was a really, really good day. My favourite...
Yeah, I was just going to say, I've got some nice photos of the bars and restaurants and city streets and all this stuff we're talking about. So, yeah, go and have a click on the link in the podcast description.
Okay, so my favourite was the Square pub, which was obviously in that Arms Square.
Yeah, so as soon as you walk in the sea gate, it was there to the left.
Yeah, and we went in there again to watch the football.
Yeah.
Okay, and we walk in there, and the music is blaring, and it was packed.
Yeah, and we only got a seat sort of over in the corner where they were sort of storing some boxes and stuff, so they moved them aside so we could sit down because I wanted to watch football again. The Euro Cup was on.
Yeah, anyway.
We were enjoying the music, having a few drinks.
It was really, really great. And, of course, in between, when the ads come on, in between with the football, the owner, which is a guy probably, I don't know, late 50s, early 60s, big bloke, personality, charisma, unbelievable. He cranked the music up. It was like the DJ.
Yeah, and he was asking us,
what songs would you like? And he found out we were Australian, and he was trying to find an Aussie song for us, and Liam, I think, may have mentioned Jimmy Barnes, but they didn't have that in their playlist. I was fascinated by this guy.
And the next thing, there's 2 wines turn up on our table. Once again, people are buying us drinks.
Yeah. So that was all good. So anyhow, we had that, and we're watching the football, and everybody's cheering, and it's just the best atmosphere. And then all of a sudden, 2 more glasses of wine turn up on the table.
I know.
So we've hardly put our hand in our pocket. Anyway, so I said to Len, I said, we can't keep on drinking this guy's booze. So what I did, the waiter came up. I said, look, I want to shout for the guy down there that keeps on shouting. I said, the proprietor. Anyway, what I didn't realise is that he was drinking with around about 10 people. So I was shouting.
So it cost us more to buy them one drink than it would have for our wine. But anyway.
It didn't matter.
I don't even know that he knew that we bought it for him, to be honest.
Oh, probably not. Because I reckon he was getting a bit tired and emotional towards the end. But the other thing we did, we were lucky enough, we were there for the folk dance and music festival.
Right.
And do you want to sort of tell people?
Oh, we just happened to come across these people walking around in costumes, and I'm like, what's going on here? And so we went to the Trudeau's Information Centre, and she showed us at a festival of dance and music, and there were people, probably 50 to 60 people dressed up in costumes from Montenegro, from Colombia, from Serbia, from, I don't know, 3 or 4 other countries, and they basically marched through the town into a couple of different squares, and in each square they stopped and played their own music and they did some dancing. I got some fabulous photos of that too, and also I got some nice videos. So as well, if you want to, like, honestly, I've got videos of all this stuff. If you go to Beach Travel Wine on Instagram, and up the top, it'll probably be one of the first ones up the top, the story highlights. Click on Kotor, and you will see all this stuff we're talking about, the old town and the mountains, and also I did this costumes, he's dancing, because it was fabulous, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was fabulous. Yeah, we were very lucky to see.
We did that.
The costumes were just so colourful.
It was really nice. But one of the things that we haven't mentioned yet, and so talk about the old town, is I think a lot of people come to Kotor to see the fortress of St. Giovanni. When you look up from anywhere in the old town, there's one mountain that sticks right up behind. You can't really see the sky almost, it's that high, it's that dramatic. But the whole way up is this stone staircase that basically zigzags, and there's one gateway in the main town. I've got a photo of that gateway, like archway, sorry, and you walk up the cobblestone streets, and that takes you to the beginning of this walk, which is like 1,300 steps or something, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got 1,350 steps. It takes about 45 minutes to an hour to walk.
But it's steep. It is straight up. You know how high it goes up?
Yeah, it's 280 metres above sea level.
Yeah.
But
it's right there. You can see, and there's a little church on the way up, and I think you have to pay to go up. And a lot of people stop at the little church. It's about halfway, and you get some amazing views. That church is like Our Lady of Remedy Church.
That's it.
It's a little one. There's nothing inside it really.
No, that was built in response to a number of plagues in the mid-15th century. Yeah, as Leanne said, there's not much to see in the church, but the views that overlook the town and the bay are unbelievable.
So you can stop there if you like. And if you see any pictures of Kotor, they are normally from the vantage point from the top of the fortress of Giovanni. And that, as I said, from the old town, you look up and you just see this zigzag. It looks like a wall, like the Great Wall of China. It's a mini version of that. And a lot of people, they just go to Kotor to walk that because it's quite challenging, and also for the views. Unfortunately, we didn't get to do it. It was
way too
last
hot.
day. It was over 38 degrees. There was no power. We didn't even know if we could come back to air conditioning or anything like that. So, yeah, unfortunately, we didn't get to do it, but that's okay. We got to do something fun on another day, didn't we?
Yeah, well, just to make people aware, the walls were built in 1382 and were in use to at least 1853. The walls of Kotor are 4.5 kilometres long and follow the triangular shape of the city and the hills.
That's interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that. That's quite long, isn't it?
Yeah, but it is, as you said, the ascent is straight up.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I would suggest it would take me a lot longer than 45 minutes to an hour. Well, then you got to come back down, I guess, don't you? But anyway, we've got quite a few people that have done it. My daughter did it, got a photo up the top, and some friends, Anna and Jim. Anna went halfway up and Jim went all the way. So, yeah, if I go back to Montenegro, I would certainly want to go and up that hill and see that. But we also had a fun day out, didn't we? We did, and I'm going to put a link to this tour because I love this tour. This was like a speedboat tour, wasn't it? And this young guy, I don't know, we booked it online because I was checking it out and I found the best one that was suited us. Next thing you know, this guy picks us up at our front door and we've got to follow him around the old city to the port, which is really weird because we could have got there on our own. I don't know what that was about.
Anyway. I think it's all part of the service.
Yeah.
Door to door. But it went for 3 hours. It was.
Well, do you know what? I remember now standing there at the dock, and I think there was like a 4 hour, a 3 hour, or 4 hour, and I think there was most people went for the shorter tour, and we did the longer one. So we were kept separate, and then you hop onto these fancy boats, aren't they?
Yeah, typical European wood panel boats. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, it's and you got to have a speedboat to go to some of the places that we went. But so what's included is. We go to the Lady of the Rocks Island, we go to some submarine tunnels, and we go to the Blue Cave, and we also check out that island that was a jail, remember?
Yep.
What's that one called?
Marmula
Island. So
Marmula Island.
now, just a side here. There at this stage, the day that we did it, I think there were 3 cruise ships in the bay, and one was like a great big one of the new Virgin ones. Now, the driver of the boat told us in the 6-month period they get up to 600 cruise ships.
That's right.
So when you think about how many that is in 6 months, that's 100 cruise ships a month, 25 cruise ships every week coming in. And luckily the bay is quite big and deep, but there are a lot of people coming in. And so if it's another reason to maybe stay overnight or 2 in Kotor, because then all the cruise ships leave and the city's quiet again, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think maybe they're going to have to look at that over tourism thing, maybe. But
but I think you've got to realise that these countries,
it's how they're making their money. Anyway, we head off down through the Bay of Kotor. The first stop we come to is the Lady of the Rocks, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is it's a man-made island with a little church, and there's a whole different lot of stories of why it's there. But what's the one that you came up with?
Okay, so the Catholic Church of Our Lady of the Rocks is the largest building on the islet and has a museum attached to it. I checked it out. It was €3 to get in. According to the legend of the island, was made over centuries by local fishermen who kept an ancient oath after finding the icon of Madonna and Child on the rock in the sea. Upon returning from each successful voyage, they laid a rock in the bay over time. The islet gradually emerged from the sea. Every year at sunset on the 22nd of July, an event called the Fascinata, residents take their boats and throw rocks into the sea. The church was renovated in 1722.
So basically, can I just simplify that? That's a bit. So what was happening is these guys would come. They found a picture. So for some reason, they started putting rocks every time they came back from their fishing trip. They put rocks, and all of a sudden, an island. They built a man-made island, and they put a church on it to put this picture in. Yes.
Yes. Now, the legend.
Yes.
Perhaps it was faith, or possibly that the icon was expensive, therefore washed up by a shipwreck. The crippled fisherman lifted the icon from the crag. He took it home with him and thought nothing else of it until the next morning. Waking up the next morning, the fisherman became aware of 2 things. First, the icon of the mother and child was missing, and second, he was no longer crippled. It was decided that a shrine to the miraculous Virgin Mary was to be built upon the very same crag on which the icon was found.
Right, so that's what that is.
The story we got on the boat was that it was a young girl that was cured. So
the whole thing is there was a miracle, so they built a church, and the painting's there inside the church.
Yeah, and I did take a photo of the painting.
Yeah, and I've got that on the website, so check it out.
And
the island.
Cynic
Yes.
mind would think that maybe that wasn't the original.
But you stop at the Lady of the Rocks Island, you can go into the church, you can wander around. It's not that big, but it's worth having a look at.
And the next stop
very popular.
The next stop, you were really intrigued. I remember you were fascinated by this.
Well, this is the submarine tunnels you're talking about. So what they did, they built these tunnels. Actually, that was happened back in World War II, didn't it? The Germans did it so they could hide their submarines, and then they had these camouflage gates that they could pull down. So if people were flying over above the enemy, they couldn't see that they had submarines. Now, interesting aside, we have some people say to us, oh, they didn't have any submarines, that's all bullshit. When we were leaving Kotor, we were talking to our driver about it, and I said, oh, apparently they didn't have any submarines. He said, well, I was in the Navy and I actually used to work on them.
That's right, he did too. Well remembered.
Yeah, right. So there were submarines. I think they only had 3 that actually stayed in the tunnels, but in 1991 or something, the Yugoslavian Navy disbanded, and so I don't know what happened to the submarines, but the submarine tunnels, and go and check out the photos. Honestly, it's incredible. But they are now a tourist destination, and some young entrepreneurs have turned one into a nightclub.
That's right.
Yeah, a rave club. It had anyway. So
yeah. So The one we sort of went into was about 127 meters long.
But they go up to 250 meters.
And about 18 meters high.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's intriguing,
It
the
is.
history and
they're just there on the bay. I did enjoy that, and I got some great photos. But then I also like the next place because we've been looking at doing like the blue cave, the blue grotto thing. I couldn't do it in Italy. We didn't do it off Split or Dubrovnik, but we knew that we could do one in Kotor. And so once again, there's a lot of boats, but you go in under a small sort of archway.
Yeah, so you wouldn't, the boats are obviously all small speed boats that go in there, and you want to get in there early.
Yes.
And you also want to go, if you can, jag it on a sunny day, because that's
what makes it blue.
But
we went in under this small arch, and there's already people jumping off a boat, swimming in there. And once again, these guys, they are so good at manoeuvring the boats, and because everyone's they're on a bit of a rotation. You go in and you go around one side and you slowly make your way around the other, and they're all sort of following the same rules, I guess.
Yeah.
And then you come out the other side, and all of a sudden you're in this little bay, and the sheer cliff, you look up and it's like red and orange sort of colours. Oh, the photos I got of that were amazing. And once again, we could stay there, and people were jumping off the boat and swimming and that sort of stuff. And, we stayed there for a good half hour.
Yeah, it was impressive.
Yeah, it was great. And then, so that was sort of the three main things. And then on our way back, we did a bit of a circumnavigation of the island that we were talking about before. What's it called again?
Mamula Island is located between the Prevlaka and Lustica peninsulas at the entrance to the Bay of Kotor.
As we were driving out past it, we didn't slow down at all, but Lyle said, that looks like it could be a resort. And I'm like, no, it looks like a jail.
Yeah, you did too, yeah. This small islet is of circular shape and is only 200 metres in diameter. The island has a fort built in 1853 by Austro-Hungarian General Lazar Mamula. The fort takes up 90% of the island's surface. Fort Mamula was part of the Austro-Hungarian Army's contingency plan of preventing the enemy entrance into the Bay of Kotor. During World War II, from the 30th of May 1942 onwards, the fascist forces of Benito Mussolini's Kingdom of Italy converted Mamula Fort into a concentration camp. In 2016, the government of Montenegro, over the objections of those who were imprisoned on the island, a plan to convert the site into a luxury beach resort and casino. Again,
which it is now.
It is now, yeah. And again,
so we were both right. It was a jail,
yeah,
and now it is a resort.
Yeah.
And when we were going past, there were boats loading up with big sound equipment. So remember?
Yeah, that's right.
So they must have there's a casino there.
Yeah.
And so that's mostly underground, I think. And I think the accommodation's up the top.
That's right.
Yeah. And they must have a room where they have some sort of nightclub or DJ or something like that.
Apparently it's really, really popular and very, very exclusive. It costs a lot of money to stay there. And obviously they fly people in to the gamblers in to it's
like a little beach area.
It's very machines, the games.
Yeah. It's a little beach area that we saw. I'm sure there's some private areas as well, because as you said, the fortress takes up 90% of the island, so they'd have recreational things inside. So, and then we just totally sat back on that boat and just enjoyed our trip all the way home, didn't we?
Yeah, listened to a bit of beautiful music, and it was really good.
It was a hazy sort of day, so it had we couldn't see as much of the mountains as I was hoping, because it was like 37 degrees or something, and I think there was like a sand sort of cloud come up from North Africa. It was like a North African wind, they were saying.
That's right,
Yep. And I don't know if we mentioned it early in the podcast, but we did have, while we were there, about 8-hour electricity blackout, but luckily the supermarket had generators, so we were able to go and get some food and that sort of thing. Just remember, Kotor, Montenegro isn't, if you've got like an eSIM that covers Europe, it won't cover Montenegro, and so you won't be able to use your Google Maps or anything like that, which I did have a bit of an issue with at the beginning, but we sorted that out as well. So anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, they do use euro as a currency.
Oh, yes, that's true.
So now the other thing is, one of the other major tourist destination, Montenegro boasts the magnificent Tara River Canyon, also known as the Tara River Gorge. It is the deepest canyon in Europe and the second largest in the world, surpassed only by the Grand Canyon in the US.
Okay, yeah.
So, obviously, it being such a small country, it would have been probably good to go and see, but we never heard of it. I only did it in the research.
Well, and also we were strapped for time, but there's also another little town not quite so far around as Kotor, which you can see has a lot of like accommodation on the water and that sort of thing.
That's it. Yeah. As you go out, you see all these little towns on the mainland, and they're all.
There's one little place that was
big hotels.
They're growing oysters and mussels as well. They have like, all that along the water. So if you've got a car, you can pull in, and there's a little place that just had oysters that you could just stop and get fresh oysters straight away. And they do have some wine from the region. We obviously sampled some of the local wine and the local beer. I found the shopping interesting. Like their tourist shops were much better than we had in Croatia. They had a lot more modern sort of fashion. I think for such a small town, I think they had quite a lot of that sort of stuff. And then there's a little modern shopping centre just outside the gates as well.
That's right. Yeah.
As I said, with a supermarket, a bakery, some clothes stores, there's some food stuff upstairs, shoe stores. I bought us a pack of cards because we had the blackout and we what are we going to play? Everything's there basically for you, right? You don't have to walk very far, do you?
Not at all. Look.
But I would highly recommend staying in the old town. I would recommend, and I'll put a link to the tour, the boat tour that we did, because I thought that was fabulous. I thought it was so professional and great value. And that's right. I mean, there's no snacks or anything. You've got to take that yourself. And I thought there's two drivers, like there's two guys on the boat, so they can help you get on and off and that sort of thing. So I thought it was fabulous.
The tour itself, how would you what's your impression?
I loved it. I think maybe 10 years ago, before it was discovered with all the cruise ships and stuff, it just would have been mind-blowing, because you would have felt like no one had seen this medieval little town before. It takes you straight back in time, doesn't it? The old town, which is so well kept, the quirkiness of the little shops in it, and the mountains, the dramatic mountains on that Bay of Kotor, that was, mind-blowing.
Yeah, for me, the dramatic landscape was what blew me away. I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah. Anyway, so as we said, go and check out the photos on beachtravelwine.com, episode 118. On the play listening on now, there will be a description. In the description, click on the link. Check out Beach Travel Wine on Instagram. Up the top, the story highlights Kotor. Now, before we say goodbye, Lyle, where was your favourite place to have a glass of wine?
Oh, I've got to go the Square Pub. The guy, I mean, we never bought the first two.
Yeah.
No, I just love the atmosphere. I thought the guy was so friendly. We actually went up and introduced ourselves before we left, and he gave us the big Montenegrin hug. The thing for me, the people were so friendly.
Yeah, that was lovely, wasn't it? I'd probably say I enjoyed having that. It's not a wine, but a beer at where we were staying at the Monte Cristo, the little area upstairs. On our own, and you're watching the football, and we had the balcony outside. I like that. It's a great spot. And the Old Town pub that was a bit on the corner there. That was
that was good. And I think too, if we had done it, but we didn't, was that, as you said, near that nightclub, the area
we went up there and had a look, didn't we?
And we had a look, and there was a restaurant there, and it just had the most magnificent views of the Bay of Kotor. I think if we had done that, that would have been our favourite. So I loved it.
Yeah, it was great. We would highly recommend, if you have the time, to go to Kotor, and if you can get across the border easily and in a car is much easier than a bus. Spend a couple of days, go out on the Bay of Kotor, climb up to the St. Giovanni Fortress and explore the old town. You won't be sorry. Well, thank you for joining us today, and thank you, Lyle.
Thank you, Leonita.
It's goodbye from me.
It's goodbye from her.
Bye.